Hello, I'm Hillary Jordan again, and if you want to know more about my services and my classes, please go to www.hillarieselementsofhealth.com. And tonight we're doing a class on understanding your Enneagram type more in depth. Hopefully the music is not going to get in our way, and that's a good angle. So we're going to start with the really easy test that we have at the beginning of the Reese of Hudson book, because
And can't turn this off?
yeah, the music.
Yeah.
I don't know how to. Let me see if I can figure it out.
No, that's okay.
Because
It's a little
You know what, I
distracting.
think
But it's not too
I know I don't like it, but I think that Gayleen is just out of her massage, so she's probably gonna figure it out. She's pretty aware. But we will ask her if she's here. So we're gonna start with a really basic test that takes a very short amount of time, unlike the really long tests I used to put everybody through for hours and hours. And then you'll just have an idea of what you probably are, and that way you can just pay really close attention to when we're talking about all the types, so that you have start to really recognize yourself and then everybody else around you, of course. As I was discussing with Susan before, you guys got here, a lot of the time your type has something to do with your parents, or one of your parents has the same type as you. That is the same thing in human design, actually. Like, a lot of us projectors have a projector parent. Same with manifestors. Since that's really unusual, those types, I think that that's an interesting point always. There's shared karma, in families. So we have to always be willing to see that. It was hard for me to see at first that my dad was the same type as me. That was like, what? No. Okay. So, at the beginning, on page 14 of this book, this is the book I like the best. There's a lot of other really good books. I don't think the internet is a good source of information for Enneagram, because they have a lot of these popular tests online nowadays that I feel like don't really get you your real results. If you take all of the tests in the beginning of each type of this book, you will know what you are, but it will take you a good hour or two.
Who's that one by?
This is Reese Hudson. Yeah, it's the basic, There's a lot of other good books that I've read that were really helpful for me. This is the only one that I really own or look at on a regular basis. So, at the beginning, let's do the test, which is on page 14 of this book. With your blank piece of paper, let's do our test, and then let's talk about my health model again, which will be kind of fast for some of you already know, and some of you don't. So, and we'll kind of discuss my background as it relates to the subject. But this is your first question. You are going to choose A, B, or C in each group. There are two groups. Okay, so you're going to identify which one of these is most like you out of the A, B, and C. And it doesn't have to be exact. And don't overanalyze it too much. Kind of go with your gut instinct and just feel it right away. You don't have to completely agree with every word. And if you cannot decide, you can pick two of them, but you can only do that for one group. Okay, so group one is A. I have tended to be fairly independent and assertive. I felt that my life works best when you meet it head on. I set my own goals, get involved, and want to make things happen. I don't like sitting around. I want to achieve something big and have an impact. I don't necessarily seek confrontations, but I don't let people push me around either. Most of the time, I know what I want, and I go for it. I tend to work hard and play hard. Any questions about that one before I move on? B. I have tended to be quiet and am used to being on my own. I usually don't draw much attention to myself socially, and it's generally unusual for me to assert myself at all that forcefully. I don't feel comfortable taking the lead or being as competitive as others. Many would probably say that I'm something of a dreamer. A lot of my excitement goes on in my imagination. I can be quite content without feeling I have to be active all the time. That's all B. anything that you need me to repeat. C. I have tended to be extremely responsible and dedicated. I feel terrible if I don't keep my commitments and do what's expected of me. I want people to know that I'm there for them and that I'll do what I believe is best for them. I've often made great personal sacrifices for the sake of others, whether they know it or not. I often don't take adequate care of myself. I do the work that needs to be done and relax. And do what I really want if there's time left. So there's A, B, or C. You could put down 1 or 2 if you really have to.
And that's it? You just get 3 choices?
Just 3 choices for this particular group. You're going to do a group 2 in a second. Tell me if you want me to repeat anything. I'm going to steal this chair.
How about the last one?
The last one was C. It was, I have tended to be extremely responsible and dedicated. I feel terrible if I don't keep my commitments and do what's expected of me. I want people to know that I'm there for them and that I'll do what I believe is best for them. I've often made great personal sacrifices for the sake of others, whether they know it or not. I often don't take adequate care of myself. I do the work that needs to be done and relax, and do what I really want if there's time left. You guys can tell me when you're all done, because I don't want to.
Test have a name in the book there?
It is called the Riso-Hudson Quest, the Quick Enneagram Sorting Test. Yes, we're done. It's that one, group 2. I am a person who usually maintains a positive outlook and feels that things will work out for the best. I can usually find something to be enthusiastic about and different ways to occupy myself. I like being around people and helping others to be happy. I enjoy sharing my own well-being with them. I don't always feel great, but I try not to show it to anyone. However, staying positive has sometimes meant that I've put off dealing with my own problems for too long. That is X. Sorry, that is X in group 2. It could be A too if you want it to be, but let's make it X right now because that'll make our thing too complicated. Group 2X. Okay, so group 2Y is I am a person who has strong feelings about things. Most people can tell when I'm unhappy about something. I can be guarded with people, but I'm more sensitive than I let on. I want to know where I stand with others and who and what I can count on. It's pretty clear to most people where they stand with me. When I'm upset about something, I want others to respond and to get as worked up as I am. I know the rules, but I don't want people telling me what to do. I want to decide for myself.
So say it about the rules again, the last sentence.
I know the rules, but I don't want people telling me what to do. I want to decide for myself. That is Y. If you did not choose 2 in the last category, you can choose 2 here if you want to. So we did X and Y and Z now. I tend to be self-controlled and logical. I am uncomfortable dealing with feelings. I am efficient, even perfectionistic, and I prefer working on my own. When there are problems or personal conflicts, I try not to bring my feelings into the situation. Some say I'm too cool and detached, but I don't want my emotional reactions to distract me from what's really important to me. I usually don't show any of my reactions when others get to me.
Can you read X again?
Yes. X is I am a person who usually maintains a positive outlook and feels that things will work out for the best. I I can usually find something to be enthusiastic about and different ways to occupy myself. I like being around people and helping others to be happy. I enjoy sharing my own well-being with them. I don't always feel great, but I try not to show it to anyone. However, staying positive has sometimes meant that I put off dealing with my own problems for too long.
You know, he does have that, the quest online.
Is it?
And
That's
he
good.
has the for free.
Uh-huh.
In the long version, he has, it's like $1 he sends it to you. Well, this was years ago
Uh-huh.
when they sent stuff, and he might have it now on the
Is it
internet.
the Enneagram.com or something like that? I think
I don't know, it's in the book. It
It's
says usually in the book.
Yeah, they do have their own website, and
That's the one I use. That's a good website.
that one is more trustworthy. Yeah.
What's it?
It's interesting
I think
because
she's gonna look it up.
when
What they say. I
I don't know if it'll say here because this book is really old, but
Well, if you just look up Riso Hudson Enneagram, you'll be fine.
yeah. I think it's the Enneagram.com or something really easy like that. It's interesting because I always tell people with human design to go ahead and go online for everything. There's hardly any books that are good. The Enneagram's the opposite. Most of the books are good. The internet's not so great. Okay. So this is the thing. My health model you guys have got underneath your test.
Which is what?
It is the circles. Yeah, it is the circles. Okay, so I always just explain this really as briefly as I can at the beginning because if we talk about personality types, like I said to Susan earlier before you guys got here, it's so easy to get caught up in your personality type and forget that we're all basically the same underneath. And this is the result, this chart is the result of my own personal journey of spiritual techniques and experience and education. So what happened was I was dealing with the physical problems a lot, and then I realized that the subtle physical diet, herbs, lifestyle changes, that's where a lot of physical stuff was actually getting changed. Then I went a little bit deeper than that, and I got into energy, and energy was then affecting people's, it was very obviously affecting people's physical body. When you get into energy, you're talking about energy work, acupuncture, meditation, different things like that. I went deeper than energy after that, and I figured out that emotions really affect everything. So, and in fact, emotions create your energy body, which creates your physical body. So emotions, I finally learned how to deal with them, and that was kind of a revelation because nobody's really dealing with them. And that's what I mostly teach about a lot now because I found that it affects your physical body so much. It's amazing. And then I went a little bit deeper than emotions, and I got into the mental body, which is where all of our beliefs are, and our concepts, and what we cling on to as us, our identification. And that is kind of where personality systems are, actually. But the problem is that studying personality systems doesn't actually help you necessarily transform anything. It's about the way you use the personality system. If you're using it in a way to really, see yourself and then try to transcend the egoic structure, then it's helpful to use personality systems. But I always like to explain this at the beginning of all the personality system classes because it's so easy to get really into personality systems. They're fun to understand ourselves. But then what I think is the most helpful is to actually transform those beliefs and completely transcend our emotions and all that kind of thing and get to the zero place of no concepts, no beliefs, and no excuse about our personality. But coming from that silent witness place, you can witness your personality and witness everybody else's personality around you, and it can be pretty hilarious, actually, and and also helpful in order to not take ourselves and other people seriously. And really, truly seeing yourself. I think Enneagram is one of the things that has helped many people really, truly, honestly see their egoic structure, and without, the little veils of ignorance we put around ourselves or the little excuses that we have, it can be like, wow, that really is me. I've seen some people have major revelations about it, and it really helped them a lot. I've also seen other people have major revelations, go forth with studying the Enneagram, and then continue to be their normal stuck selves and not to actually change anything in their life or, really get past their emotional and mental burdens. So I always just like to put that in, Deeper than the mental body is the soul body, and that is kind of what we come into this life with. That's pretty obvious to me now that we actually kind of usually already have our personality structure, I think, before we even come into this body.
See, and I don't agree with that. I
You don't
think
think
we're
so?
born as pure essence, and every minute that we're around a different person or whatever, that's what brings our personality out. So yeah, I
So
believe
you're
we're
of
born
the-
pure essence.
You're of the nurture, nurture versus nature, You're of the nurture standpoint. That what you're around, what you've dealt with as a child, that has more of an effect on you.
Yeah.
And I was of that same standpoint when I studied psychology before I got into all this stuff too. What I've noticed is not that pure innocent place doesn't exist. In fact, it exists more than all of our personalities exist. What I've noticed is we go back to that place. Either we die and we go back to that place and then we come back to having some kind of ego, right? Or we go back to that place in meditation, we go back to that place in energy work, we go back to that place in all these healings that we do, or as a practice, as a common spiritual practice. We keep going back to that place, but we don't always learn how to integrate it and keep it here with us all the time, because we have the ego and we also have that oversoul. So when we go back to that place, I think the most important thing is to go back to that place regularly enough to be starting to bring it into your real feeling of everyday life, and at the same time see the ego structure, see the emotions, see the beliefs, all that kind of stuff too. There's a balance there. We talked about it in the emotional class for sure, and so that place, I usually just call it God actually. But we don't have to call it that, right? It can be called a lot of things. Some people really hate that word. That place is who we are more fundamentally than the ego, but because we forget that we are that, we keep doing this loop of going back to our ego and then going back there. So it's cool, but it's definitely there's a cycle that happens. And sometimes forever and ever and ever, like I told you guys, of last class, it can go on. So the good thing is actually surrendering or submitting to that place, surrendering or submitting to that unity, oversoul, God, oneness place, and in a way where you're clearly seeing your personality structure, you're clearly seeing your emotional issues, your mental issues, and feeling through them and feeling God at the same time. That's the place where I think that most of the magic happens and actually you transform and kind of get free of some of those constraints. Because the problem with personality is, even though it's really fun for me, I think it's fun. I have to admit that. But besides that, even though it's fun, it's limiting, and it keeps us in this cage kind of all the time. So, and I definitely agree that a lot of people end up taking on personalities like their parents or something. The people that we came to this life with, this lifetime, always have a huge influence on us. We always have shared karma with them, and there's a whole long list of ways of looking at karma and the way that you may have a very long past before this. So it doesn't matter too much whether we believe that we have our personality this life, or we quite often have this personality or whatever. But I think the most important thing is to start to learn how to see ourselves, observe, and then what they say here is let go. Like, see how you can let go of attachment to the things that your personality just naturally wants to be attached to. And observing it from kind of that silent witness place, while at the same time feeling. Because I think that's a super crazy balance, because some people tend to go more towards objective, silent witness, and some people tend to go more towards feeling everything and not having the silent witness factor. If we can have both, if we can feel stuff and not avoid our feelings, we talked about that forever, our last class, but that's what I usually talk about forever. This book is really useful because there's a lot of like little charts that show what each personality does when they're getting really unhealthy or when they're going towards health, for instance. There's a really useful chart that I won't go over except for the people who have those personalities in here today, because there's like a long chart for every type that is about health and unhealth, and it looks like this. And so there's 9 different levels of healthy, average, and then unhealthy. And some of them, the most unhealthy always sound like mass murderers or like people who are in prison. So you have to not take it too seriously, because it's just like every type has tendencies towards like horrific behaviors and also tendencies towards very noble, good, awesome, fun things. So I like these guys' view of the Enneagram because they tend to see it pretty deeply and emphasize trying to get underneath your personality and just witness it and see the personalities around you, but see that deeper soul that's underneath, those personalities that are around you. I find it fun sometimes when you're having an issue with somebody else in a work environment or a social environment or something. Just to be able to see what the personality is and what your personality is and how they're triggering each other, because a lot of times it's like, it just becomes less personal. It's like, wow, this is not a personal thing. I have these characteristics where I go outward or whatever and they go inward or whatever it is, there's all these different ways that their personalities can trigger each other. That's why they use the Enneagram now in workplaces a lot, and in popular psychology, a lot of therapists use it. Okay. It's also really awesome because you don't need to know your birth time. Once you figure out your type and everything, you can see types around you without having to, figure out where their planets were or anything like that. Okay. So, I try to discourage against they put an example of it in here. Of course I get paranoid. After all, I'm a 6. That whole thing where we excuse our personality because, I see myself do it sometimes too. Oh, well, I'm just like that though because I'm this type, It's like, if you can find how to release that need, the need that's underneath the behavior, then everybody ends up loving you. And the best thing about Enneagram, I think, is going towards your integration type. Figuring out what's your integration type, what's the type that is the most healthy for you to be like, and what is the disintegration type for you? What type do you go into? The unhealthy parts of that type. So disintegration type is always the unhealthy parts of whatever type it is, and integration are always the healthy parts of that type. So I'm going to use myself as an example again. I'm an 8, so if I go forward into integration, I will be more like a healthy 2. I will not show, I should not show aspects of an unhealthy 2. That wouldn't make sense. If I go backwards into disintegration, I should show aspects of an unhealthy 5, because it's disintegration. It wouldn't make sense to show healthy 5 characteristics in disintegration. Everybody gets that? Yeah. I think this is the most.
Do you have a diagram that shows how you show the path of integration and disintegration?
I'm going to draw it again. I'm going to draw it. Let's first give you your codes for the test you just took. the test that you just took, if you have an AX, you may be a 7. If you have an AY, you may be an 8. If you have an AZ, you may be a 3. If you have a BX, you may be a 9. If you have a BY, you may be a 4. If you have a BZ, you may be a 5. If you have a CX, you may be a 2. If you have a CY, you may be a 6. And if you have a CZ, you may be a 1. So go ahead and tell me what your results are, anybody?
Well, I did BY, which is a 4,
Uh-huh.
and I really struggled between Y and Z, which is really interesting to me that you're either emotional or you're not. I'm like, am I emotional?
Are you an artist?
Yes. So I have some I have some unemotional traits in work and stuff, but I'm pretty emotional. So I thought that was really
But
interesting.
that's interesting because that's 4 or 5 and they can be related.
Yeah,
It's
because-
the wings, right?
You're either BY or BZ.
Yeah.
Okay, so make a note that you're either a 4 or 5 because we're going to talk more in depth and then you'll know, I think.
I just think we need to get clear about whether I'm emotional or not.
You're emotional.
Well, we'll talk.
She's got
She
emotional.
knows me pretty well.
She's activated her emotion.
Oh, in her human design chart, yeah.
And she's emotional.
Okay. So, yeah, and a 4 is a very emotional type and a 5 is a very cerebral type. So, but when we go more deep into it, you'll really get a feel.
I'm more
Feel good.
emotional than cerebral.
The other thing is that wing types are the types that are closest to, like, if you are a 3, you will have either a 4 or a 2 wing type. If you are a 5, you will have either a 4 or a 6 wing type. So most likely you are one of those and you have the other wing type, like a 4 with a 5 or something like that. Anybody else?
It's funny. I was typed 25 years ago by Riso as a
Yeah.
1, and I ended up. I've been working on my path of integration, but
Uh-huh.
answering your questions, I'm a AX, so I may be a 7. So I'm like, hallelujah! I finally am getting
Hey,
toward the
good
path
job.
of integration.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Does one go to 7?
Yeah, one healthy and unhealthy goes to a 4.
Right. That's her path of integration. So that would be really awesome if that's what's happened for her because
Yeah.
people's types do, I mean, at different times in your life, you test differently, you know. When I was younger, I tested that I was an 8 with a 9 wing, and now I test that I'm an 8 with a 7 wing, you know. But when you look at my overall life and you look at my parents, I have either a 6 with a 7 wing or a 7 with a 6 wing mother, and then I have an 8 father. So it's very obvious to me that it would make sense that I was an 8 with a 7 wing. That would be both my parents' types, kind of. Anybody else want to talk about what they
In the
got?
first group,
Uh-huh.
can you read the first couple of sentences of the Enneagram?
The first group of A and B.
Just be,
Okay. B, I have tended to be quiet, and I'm used to being on my own. I usually don't draw much attention to myself socially, and it's generally unusual for me to assert myself all that forcefully. I don't feel comfortable taking the lead or being as competitive as others. Many would probably say that I'm something of a dreamer. A lot of my excitement goes on in my imagination. I can be quite content without feeling I have to be active all the time.
it's interesting because that would be 4, right?
It's
Like
4 or
BY.
5 actually, because it's a B. So it's 4, 5, or 9.
Really?
Because it's a B. So what did you get in X, Y, or Z?
Why?
Then you're a 4.
Well,
Or we think
I
you're a 4 right
originally
now.
wrote down a CY, so it makes me a 6, which I thought I had been a 6 for many years now.
Oh, you wrote down C, Y,
I
but
really went back and forth on the first one. I was thinking B. That sounds really right. There was a struggle to put the C down. I had
you might have
to think
become
about
a little bit more that way the last few years. I would put them both down right now because we're gonna go in depth, so you're gonna know. I promise you're gonna have a good idea. If we have to, we can use my intuition, but I don't think we need to. Hi. Yeah, no problem. Do you, can you stop?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry if we were too loud.
Now
Um, so we know everybody's.
No.
No.
I am BX or CX, which is a 9 or a 2.
Okay.
And I've been reading a lot, and I've pretty much got to that I'm a 9, but I'd like to be really sure.
Yeah.
And I think my dad's a 9, and I think my mom's like a 2, 3. So
That would make sense. So we have like a whole range here. It sounds like we have
yeah.
1, 2. We don't have any 3s. We don't think. We have 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 going on. Maybe 9.
No, 8.
I'm an
You're
8, but that doesn't matter because I already know. Okay, so 1, 2. So I'm going to show you your paths of disintegration and integration if you want. And I'm just trying to draw you this symbol because it's a sacred geometry symbol. You know, most sacred geometry is not 9-pointed. This is definitely an abnormal kind of. Sorry, we're right here, Megan. No, I'm sorry.
Didn't they say it started from the Druids or the Sufis? That
They said in this one Sufis and there's a South American psychology school, but that was way after everything else. They said like Catholic monks and Sufis and something else. I think Indian possibly. I haven't heard Druid, but that would be cool to me because I'm into that. I am willing to bet that this is the kind of knowledge that it's, you know, it transcends culture, so probably a lot of people figured it out. It's useful to break everything into different numbers of things, right? If you study vague science, you have 3 of everything because everything comes 1 goes into 3. Then it goes into 5, then it goes into 7. It would make sense. There would also be a 9 there. These are prime numbers or whatever. So you can break all of reality into a number of different things. You can break it into 64 and have the I Ching, and then you see, you know, consciousness go in cycles of 64 then. And this is just a cycle of 9, so it's a little bit more basic than that. It's not quite as detailed and subtle, but it's also detailed and subtle enough to show all the basic personalities around you in a way that's pretty easy to conceptualize.
Oh yeah, they give our Jungian archetypes for each one too. That was interesting.
Oh yeah, in this book?
No,
different
but
book or-
no, same author but different book.
Cool. Yeah, Jung. I don't know if he studied this, but they definitely use him a lot
They
when they're
use him
talking
a lot,
about
yeah.
him. When they're talking about Enneagram, psychologists use Enneagram so much. So, okay. So this is a little bit off, but gives you the basic idea at least. Okay, so you have. I'm gonna do a better triangle. My drawing never comes
You
up
can
to
dance
snuff.
but not draw, huh?
I know there's all these artists sitting here. I liked
The
art a
drawing
lot.
kind or the free flowing kind.
Yes, I'm not the measured out kind of artist. I liked art a lot in high school, but I never did much like kind of visual art. I always lamented that I wasn't a visual artist because you can put out a piece of art by yourself instead of meeting other people. But you know, that's probably probably talking about my 8ness now. So here is your basic Enneagram. It's not perfect. And I'm going to put all the numbers on the points so that if you want to draw this, you can. I used to make people draw this in all my classes because then you have kind of that, you can go back to it and use it as a reference for disintegration, integration, and that kind of thing. So 1 is up here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9's always at the top.
And what are the 3 triads? How do they? Oh, I can see.
We're going to go over them actually. There's different triads. Yeah, we're going to go over triads. Let's talk about integration and disintegration first.
Okay.
If you are, so we were already talking about 8. So if you were an 8, you would go towards 2. So your arrow would go towards 2. And 5 would go towards 8 for integration. 6 disintegrates to 3, so 3 would go towards 6. 6 integrates to 9.
Do you show integration versus disintegration in a particular way?
I'm showing
symbolically?
integration here.
We're just showing
Basically, if you go backwards, you're going to have disintegration. So
okay,
we'll go
so
over it. We'll make sure that
integrationally.
you know.
Okay.
So if you're a 9, you're going to go towards 3. Integrate towards 3. A 4 is going to integrate towards 1. I know that from having many 4 friends. And 1s are going to integrate towards 7, just like Susan. And 7 is going to integrate towards 5. So we'll go back to this later, okay? So if you are a 1, where does your arrow go? It goes towards 7. If you are a 2, your arrow goes towards 4. If you are a 3, your arrow goes towards 6. If you are a 4, your arrow goes towards 1. If you are a 5, your arrow goes towards 8. If you are a 6, your arrow goes towards 9. If you are a 7, your arrow goes towards 5. And if you are an 8, your arrow goes towards 2. If you are a 9, your arrow goes towards 3. So any of the types that you thought you might be, make sure you make a note of your integration type for those, so you know. Go over those. Okay. I didn't go into my background much. If you guys have any questions on my background at any time, just ask me during class, because I get actually bored of saying the same speech over and over again. And I have tons of information about it on my website too, which is hilary'selementsofhealth.com. I've studied the Enneagram for a long time. I never did, well, I did do some official classes at San Francisco State University. After that, I just studied with various friends and read books and that kind of thing. And if you are really into personality types, you start typing everyone around you right away from the beginning. And that can kind of help to understand, like to really deeply feel into it. I'm a trial and error person personally, so I like to kind of experiment with the real knowledge with people. Okay, so we're going to go into 1. The things that I made notes about that I wanted to make sure you guys got were these different charts in this book, and towards the beginning of this book, that show the basic, not just basic fears, but all the, I'll show you, I don't even know how to say it actually, but when we talk about 1s, for instance, Their deadly passion is anger or resentment repressed, which leads to continual frustration and dissatisfaction with themselves and the world. The one, I just have to use my book because my notes. The one is also, this is a description, very short description of one. The reformer, the principled idealistic types. Ones are ethical and conscientious with a strong sense of right and wrong. They are teachers and crusaders, always striving to improve things, but afraid of making a mistake. Well organized, orderly, fastidious, they try to maintain high standards, but can slip into being critical and perfectionistic. They typically have problems with repressed anger and impatience. At their best, healthy ones are wise, discerning, realistic, and noble, as well as morally heroic. Gandhi was a one, so was Joan of Arc.
Hillary Clinton.
Huh?
Hillary Clinton.
Oh, is she? Yeah, I think it says that in here too. You got your pre-research done. Since you
Oh, I've
already
been
got your book
studying
in.
for like 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, finally.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were the one who asked me to do this.
Yeah,
Because
I
you're here
did.
that we did this class.
Oh, did you take the one before that was
I
on the
wanted
website?
the one at Enneagram City, and I didn't make it there.
Yeah, well, that was like, we did all the tests of that one, so maybe
Yeah.
that was definitely like in depth, but also, I don't know, it was,
Yeah.
it was a little tedious, but the one is also CZ on our test, just so you know. I'm just gonna flip through these because I don't like my notes. So when we talk about the 9 deadly sins or passions, we're going off kind of a Catholic background. But the most important thing is just to remember that any ego structure is based on untruth. So getting to what is the core of that ego structure's untruth is what we're looking for. And for ones, it is a resentment or anger about not being perfect themselves, really is what it comes down to. And that gets directed outwards too. Because like everybody can see with most personalities, right? If we're doing something to ourselves, we end up doing it to everybody else around us. Okay. The unconscious childhood message for one, and I can write down stuff whenever you guys will get another.
I was talking about my daughter.
Okay, you can always just talk to us if you need to.
Well,
Because we're a small group, so you
yeah.
might as well discuss.
It makes me think about my daughter and how the similarities, like I have a little one in me and she has a little one in her, and she has a little 4 in her, and very some real similar patterns.
It'll be helpful when you really know her type
Four
because
goes to the 1.
the integration and disintegration, that's what I was just going to say. If you are a 4, then when you're really and you're healthy, you act like a healthy one. And a healthy one really sticks by certain morals in a kind of
You said
clear and
wise,
structured way.
wise, and what are some other words for a healthy one?
We will go all into that.
Okay.
Let's give you first the unconscious childhood message of the 1. It is not okay to make mistakes. You can see how if you had a blunt parent, you could have believed that pretty easily because you've got the whole parenting thing is kind of a 1 type of the whole fatherly thing is kind of a 1 kind of deal anyway. One's basic fear is of being bad, corrupt, evil, or defective. Ones have the desire, their basic desire is to have integrity, which deteriorates into critical perfectionism. It's interesting, like, what everybody's relationship to this personality is. Because let's say you're not a 1 and you don't have 1s in your life. I don't have 1s in my family much, although I think my sister is actually a 1 wing type. And my reaction always, though, to this has been like, whoa. I figured out recently, it must have been my grandmother was a 1, and my mother probably integrates into 1 or something like that, because there's definitely, there's always, these are archetypes, and they show up in every place in our life. Lost childhood messages for a 1 are, you are good. So nobody told them that they were good, or they didn't feel that they were ever good enough. They never felt that they were told that enough. It's a message that didn't get through. And ones are part of the instinctive triad, also called the physical triad. Let's do first the behavior. So this is like a red flag behavior. When you see this in yourself or others, anybody especially that's a one, then you have to start going, okay, how can I let go of this behavior a little bit and start transcending this attachment that I've got? And this, for one, is value judging, condemning yourself and others. And ones identify powerfully with the superego, with the capacity to evaluate, to compare, measure, and discern experiences or things. They resist recognizing anger-based tension. So there's a lot of anger that's being pushed under the rug with ones, and that's why I can find them scary sometimes because it's not coming out completely on the surface. It's like under there, you know. And their self-image is, so they're trying to sustain this self-image. Reasonable, sensible, objective, moderate, prudent, moral, good, and rational. Tell me if you want me to stop at any point and go slower or repeat something or write anything down for you. There's an invitation of each type. That they put this in a chart called an invitation to abundance. It's basically like every type brings something to the table that's really awesome for everybody else. And for ones, the invitation is to live for a higher purpose. I mean, that's what they're bringing to everyone else. You know, to remember that it's your true nature to be wise and discerning. To live for a higher purpose instead of just your own basic needs or whatever. They are part of the instinctive triad. So, when we talk about triads, we'll go back to our Enneagram here. We'll write down.
Is there a restroom in here? I
Yes,
assume?
go ahead all the way,
Okay.
almost all the way to the back, to the right.
Okay.
So 1, 8, and 9 are the instinctive or physical triad. They're all next to each other, 1, 9, 8. 2, 3, 4 are the feeling or heart triad. And 5, 6, and 7 are the thinking or mental triad. So, when we go more deeply into triads, actually we can do that this time and then not go as deep when we go to the other types, because once you get this, you're going to understand what type fits in where and everything. There are 2 different triads we're working with. This is one of them. So, if you are a instinctive or physical triad 1, 9, or 8, you're more, okay, let's put it this way. Your ego thinks yourself is your body, is how I think about it. Because you're kind of based more in the body center. Like, you're going to be paying more attention to and having more attachment to the physical in a certain way. They're all different, so they're all going to have attachment to the physical in different ways. The instinctive or physical triad will most often repress feelings or try not to feel them. And also, they have, I mean, our culture is not avoidant of the mental, really, right? Our culture is more avoidant of the emotional, but these guys are especially going to repress feelings, and they're not going to be totally comfortable with all the concepts and mental stuff either. They're going to be more comfortable with physical reality. and kind of like putting boundaries down is what they say. Boundaries and understanding things in a more physical, material way. It doesn't mean that they're not deep. It's just their particular attachment.
And they're in touch with that as opposed to resisting that. What they
They're
say
more
about-
attached, even not just in touch, but attached.
So the thing that they're usually out of touch with though is anger.
Yes, there is a major emotion for each of them. If so, these guys are going to be out of touch with all. They're not going to want to talk about feelings in general, actually. Okay, but anger is they're going to be more an angry type. The physical people. The next one, the feeling heart triad, is going to be more about their stories and attachment to self-image. And the way I look at it is they're the ones that dwell on their feelings sometimes, and they have trouble letting it go. So they're more attached to, and they're more attached to shame, actually, if you have to pick one emotion. Because underneath everything in their ego is shame. And underneath everything in these guys' ego is anger. The thinking mental triad people, underneath everything in their ego is fear. You can see it with some of them really easy. It can come out as anxiety instead, but it's the same basic emotion. That's a really good way to type yourself or other people around you, is to kind of feel, I don't know how easy it is for everybody else, I can kind of feel what feeling is more ruling the person. And that could be a way that you can figure out what their personality type is. When you're talking about feeling heart triad, they're more attached to their heart or the feelings or relationships or stories. These guys, the thinking mental types, they're going to go up in their head and not want to come down for feelings or for the body. They really want to stay in the area of ideas, concepts. That's what feels like home to them.
So I find anger to be really scary. Other people's anger, and I'm not very in touch with having much anger. Like every now and then, my anger will get, I can get angry.
So you're not these guys. I can tell you that because I definitely know as an 8 with a 9 sister and an 8 dad. I can tell you.
My brother-in-law scares me. I think that's.
He's probably one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. You though, so we know already that you're either feeling or thinking. I could see you being a 5 or a 2 or a 4, and because I've seen a lot of 5s be really scared of anger, and I've seen a lot of 2s and 4s also kind of avoid anger. When we get to emotions, right? Everybody's got all of them. I mean, so it's whatever we're reacting to or we're avoiding or repressing that is
I
important.
thought the 9 was really non-confrontational, really.
It is.
Not.
And underneath everything, they have anger. Definitely, believe me, because I got a lot of 9 friends
No,
and a 9 sister.
No, I know, but you were just saying that they're not, you said something that made it sound, she said something about not feeling like she has a lot of anger, but a 9 would maybe not know they had a lot of anger.
Yeah, a 9 wouldn't know they had a lot of anger. A 9 would claim to not have anger. Everybody who's really close to them might be able to feel it, but it wouldn't come out necessarily on the surface as much. I've seen some 9s be really angry, but it's not the norm.
Or there's bursts,
Yeah. Our other triad, okay, so, let's talk about this triad first with the personality and essence chart here. If you are the thinking center type, your asleep is mental chatter, figuring it out, strategies, doubt, anxiety, fear, and anticipation. That's when you're not awake, is one way of saying it, or you're not living in the moment, you're not here and now. When you're awake or living in the here and now as a thinking center type, you're going to be quiet mind, inner guidance, knowing, clarity, support, and steadiness, open to the present moment. You can see how it's just that transcending of the anxiety, the basic anxiety there, and not believing all this stuff up here and letting it come in and out. These are things that we all have to do, you know, whether we're that type or not. But it's just some people are more ruled by that than others, you know. The feeling center people are, when they are asleep, they are more about self-image, stories, emotionality, holding on to moods, and adapting to affect others. When they are here and now or awake, they are authentic, truthful, compassionate, forgiving, inner directed. So instead of being trying to please or whatever it is outer directed, they're going into themselves. And there's a flow of energy. They're like letting everything flow and not getting attached to a feeling. The instinctive center people, when they are asleep, are all about boundaries. Like I said, it's interesting that there's a physical thing there. I thought that was interesting when I was studying that again recently, because I didn't remember that part, that there's a lot of boundaries. They focus on boundaries. Like, how can we control things?
Isn't it interesting though, because isn't the 9 like totally boundaryless? Like,
No, the 9 thinks they're boundaryless. I have a lot of 9 friends, and they're
no, but
like,
I mean,
they're harmonious. They think they're harmonious and peacemaker, but they usually figure out the boundaries in order to keep everything kind of balanced. So they are still focused in that kind of physical place of boundaries. We'll go more deeply into it. You'll get it. Don't worry.
okay, I'm still.
I know it's when you're first in this part of it. It's like it doesn't make sense yet. Don't worry. When they are awake, so when they're asleep, their boundaries, tension, numbness, defending. There's a lot of defensiveness, disassociating, and irritation. People that get irritated all the time, they're usually up here on this. And the people that are up here, when they are awake, they are connected with life, relaxed, open, sensing. They have inner strength. They are grounded. Because that physical orientation does have a kind of, you can be very grounded in that place. And an acceptance. They're accepting. 9s are a perfect example usually of the accepting, grounded kind of. Okay. The other triad. The other triads are the positive outlook group.
This is a whole new triad.
This is a whole new triad. Don't get too worried because I'm kind of doing the complicated stuff first here. We're going to go back deeply into the 1, 2, 3, like that. So positive outlook group are the 2, 7, and 9. The competency group are 1, 3, and 5 for the competency, and the reactive group. Let me tell you, if you're in a fight with your significant other and you look at the Enneagram book, you could find lots of fodder for, oh, you're part of the reactive group, no wonder. But then you have to look at yourself too, right? Okay, so 4, 6, and 8 are the reactive group. So this one is harder to understand for me than the other triad, because with the other triad, you're looking at who's next to each other here, right? Like 1, 9, and 8 are one triad, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, 6, and 7. These are the mental, the emotional, and the physical. It's a really easy way of looking at it. If you look at these groups, positive outlook group, competency group, and reactive group, you've got 2, 7, and 9. So there's not as much. There's not as much of a pattern, yeah. And then you've got 1, 3, and 5. 1, 3, and 5. I mean, they're every other one, kind of. You can't even see a shape they make because we don't have like a triangle or anything like that. 4, 6, and 8. 4, 6, and 8. Just like every other. Yeah. I mean, they're still in a row, kind of, I guess. So 2, 7, and 9. 2, 7, and 9 are the positive outlook group. That is the helper, the enthusiast, and the peacemaker. The competency group 1, 3, and 5 are the perfectionist, or the other names we have for the 1. There's so many names for each type. So the 3, the performer is what I usually call them. The 5, the observer, or investigator. That's the competency group. And they're all about doing, like, being able to do it all right, kind of. Or at least being able to do it all. In some way. The 4, 6, and 8 are reactive groups. So they're the ones who get really reactive and fight, because if somebody brings them something, they're going to have more defensiveness. 4s are the individualist or the romantic. 6 are the loyal skeptic or the loyalist, or a bunch of other things you want to call them. 8s are the challenger, or they've been called, I think,
The boss.
Leader and the boss. Yeah.
President.
Okay. So when you're talking about that triad, the main themes are: if you are a 2, you emphasize a positive self-image. You're a caring, loving person. They focus on their good intentions. They avoid seeing their own neediness, disappointment, and anger. This will make more sense when we go more into 2. They have problems with overemphasis on the needs of others and neglect of their own needs. That's the main thing right there with the 2. But they are part of the positive outlook group, because they're kind of trying to make everything better, trying to make the world a better place. 7s, they emphasize positive experiences, enjoyment, activity, excitement, and fun. They are the party animal. And they avoid seeing their pain and emptiness, their role in creating suffering for themselves and others. By the way, that would be an unhealthy characteristic in a 7, so that wouldn't be what Susan would be displaying if she was in her integration in 7. Their problems would be overemphasis on their own needs. They easily feel burdened by the needs of others. And a 9, they're going to emphasize the positive qualities of others and their environment. They idealize their world. So they create a little world with a boundary around it, usually. And then everybody in it is a great character, and they're kind of an ideal character in their place. They avoid seeing problems with their loved ones or their environment, as well as their own lack of development. By the way, if you ever hear somebody say that they didn't type into any of the Enneagram, they're usually a 9. Quite often, 9s are the ones that
Can't figure it out.
they tested on all the, it's like they took all the tests and kind of scored high on everything, or low on everything,
So, tell me how that relates now. What'd you just
Well,
explain?
um,
The 9?
The positive group. She's
we're just talking about the positive outlook group. I'm just introducing the 9. We haven't talked about the 9 yet, but she's trying to figure out
Then
if
what
she's
are
9.
you trying to? Oh, I see.
We're just saying that the main qualities of the 9 right now, and the problems that the 9 have as part of the positive outlook group are feelings of overwhelmed by their own needs and the needs of others. They do not want to deal with either. So each type in the positive outlook group has a problem with needs. The 2s talk about everybody else's needs instead of theirs. The 7s overemphasize their own needs. And the 9s are overwhelmed by everybody having needs, and they don't want to deal with any of it.
Oh.
Okay. The competency group. All about doing, being able to do, kind of. 3, and 5. So ones emphasize being correct, organized, and sensible. They focus on standards, improving themselves, and knowing the rules. They manage their feelings by repression and denial. Feelings are channeled into activity, getting things done perfectly. Feelings are also held as physical rigidity in the body. Oh, so I've noticed that body work is really great for ones because of that. Actually. Ones want to work with the system. They try to be a good boy or girl and are irritated with people who disregard the rules. So, good boy or girl is a good way of, like a shorthand way of thinking about them. The whole competency group has a way that they relate to systems, because they're kind of relating to systems in society more. So for 3s, they emphasize being efficient, capable, and outstanding. They focus on goals, being pragmatic, and knowing how to present self. They are all about presentation of ego and development of ego. And they manage their feelings by repression and keeping attention on tasks, staying active. Achievement offsets painful feelings. They look to others for feeling cues. The way they relate to the system is that they want to work with the system, but they also like being outside of it, and bending the rules and finding shortcuts.
That's the 3, right?
That's the 3. So the 1 works inside the system. The 5 doesn't like the system at all. And the 3s work inside and outside. Wherever they can be a star, usually.
Yeah.
And 5s emphasize being the expert and having deep information. They focus on the process, objective facts, and maintaining clarity and detachment.
I'll be back.
Okay.
Got it.
They manage their feelings by splitting off and abstracting feelings. They stay preoccupied and cerebral, as if their feelings were happening to somebody else. This 5 type is like a stereotypical mind type. When you look at a movie and you see, like, Einstein was a 5. When you see any of those people that are just so caught up in some kind of cerebral work that they completely forget the rest of life. 5s reject the system and want to work on their own outside of it. They have little patience with rules or procedures. If you're like me, you'll find that you do, actually the more expanded I become, or the better my consciousness gets, the more I can relate to my disintegration and my integration type. You can kind of see yourself, you can see, different parts of yourself doing your disintegration and your integration at different times all the time. And you're not okay. So main themes of the reactive group. The reactive group is 4, 6, and 8. The 4 is a rescuer. They seek a rescuer. Someone to understand them and support their lives and dreams. They want to be seen. They fear abandonment, that no one will care for them, that they will not have enough support to find and become themselves. They deal with others by keeping others interested and limiting access, playing hard to get, and holding on to supporters. I have to say, too, I have thought I was kind of like different types that I wasn't before, and then you have a friend that's that type, and you're like, oh, wait, no, I'm not really like that. Because I always think I'm a 4, actually. I really identify with 4s, and then I hang around 4s, and I'm like, no, I really don't work that way. Like,
So what was that about supporters? I didn't understand.
so all of the reactive group is about dealing with others, kind of. And the way that the 4s deal with others is by keeping others interested, playing hard to get, holding on to their supporters, kind of trying to, lure in the outside. A lot of 4s are performers or artists of some kind. Not all. 6s seek independence and support. So both sides of the field. They want someone to rely on, but they also need to be the strong one. 6s fear being abandoned without support, but also becoming too dependent on others. So I feel like 6s are always playing both sides of the field, They're like over here and over here, because they don't want to be completely dependent. They also want to know that people are being loyal to them and supporting them. It's always this going back and forth between keeping people close but not too close. They want them to get so close that they are vulnerable. They deal with others by being committed and reliable while trying to maintain their independence. They are engaging but also defensive. All of these types are defensive because they're the reactive group.
When you say engaging, what do you mean?
They tend to be really reliable, do what's expected of them. 6s will go ahead and cooperate right away and get working on something. They're really hardworking. People are it's easy to engage with them. So you can kind of go into a project and know that a 6 is going to, work. They're not going to sit there. Unfortunately, that's part of their ego structure, though, to try to create a certain effect, just like everybody else, right? They seek the reactive group for 8s now. Keep asking me questions when you want to. 8s seek independence and self-reliance. They want to need others as little as possible to be their own person. They fear being controlled or dominated by others. Thus, they fear intimacy and becoming vulnerable by trusting or caring too much. So it's really by basic fears that you can really type yourself in others, I find. Like, if you really find what's deeply underneath everything, though, like what's the major issue that person has, that's how you really know. Because I could be typed as a 4 almost, except for when you get down to my biggest fear is being controlled or dominated. That's definitely me. So when you see that in yourself, you're like, okay, that's what that's my type. 8s deal with others by keeping their guard up, not letting others get too close, and toughening themselves against hurt and their need for others. Here's a good example of something. So we haven't talked about this yet, but every type has an instinctual variant. Every type is either social, sexual, or self-preservation. Those are 3 subtypes of each type. So, using myself as an example again, the thing I just read about 8s dealing with others, not letting others get too close, toughening themselves against others, that's not quite me because I'm a social 8. So that's always a factor too. So when you're looking at your type and you're like, that doesn't quite fit though, go ahead and read the instinctual variants and the wing types, because that'll make you more certain about what you are. Okay. Alrighty. So these are the 2 triads. Talking about the positive outlook group, the competency group, and the reactive group. Let's go back to our 1. Unless anybody has a question about.
I was going to ask about the one, what their biggest fear is.
All right, we're getting there.
Is that where you were?
We're going to get there, yeah. I'm sure we can solve this like sensible, mature adults is the thing that a 1 says when we're talking about the competency group. That's like the competency group cuts off feelings and solves problems logically. So I'm sure we can solve this like sensible, mature adults. It's not like everyone's going to say that all the time. It's just, this is the theme kind of underlying things. A 1 with a 9 wing is called the idealist. Now that's just one of their names. I'm sure they have other names for these types. If we need to go into wing types, we will with you guys in particular. I wasn't going to go into them unless we know, unless we're trying to figure out your wing type or something like that. The 1 with a 2 wing is the advocate. You kind of get a feeling of what that's like. So if you have a 1 with a wing of a 2, they're going to be a little more about other people. And if you have a 1 with a wing of a 9, they're going to be a little bit more idealizing their world like a 9. A 9 is very peaceful too, very harmonizing. So, yeah, probably that makes sense. And if you had like Gandhi, for instance, who was a 1, Well, actually, he could have been either one of these, right? The advocate or the idealist.
Same with
Sometimes you can look at somebody and go, oh, okay. Because if you know somebody who's a 1, you can kind of feel what wing type they are based on what you know with those other types. Okay. So when you talk about the self-preservation variant, their preoccupation is with getting and maintaining physical safety and comfort for themselves.
We're talking about in general now.
Yeah, we're talking about the 3 variants, the 3 instinctual variants that are subdivisions of every type. I just lost my... You got self-preservation, sexual, and social. And they will change your type a little bit. Just, they'll slant it more towards, this is very simple. It's like self-preservation are about survival, security, comfort. They're all about their individual self. Sexual is all about one-on-one relationship. It doesn't mean that every relationship they have is sexual. That's obviously not. Would not be a very deep way of seeing it. So your social variant. Okay. It doesn't give me the same sentence. Okay. Well, they have a desire to be part of a group. They have a desire to be in parties, meetings, groups, belonging to things that makes them feel less vulnerable, to be part of it, to have people, an entourage, a crew. The sexual variant is all about them and one other person. It doesn't have to be their partner. It could be, it's like whenever, they're always going to be better one-on-one. And the social variant is going to be kind of lit up by a group situation. I like groups, obviously, that's why I teach classes. A self-preservation person is going to be like the loner that's always by themselves. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? So going back to our 1. My pen is... Okay, so just ask questions when you need to. So back to our 1. The wake-up call for 1 is feeling a sense of personal obligation to fix everything themselves. So that's like when they start knowing there's an unhealthy stream of consciousness going on or situation or whatever. They start wanting to fix everything themselves. It sounds like you have a 1 relative. There's my daughter. Yeah. The type, that's always interesting too, right? Because 1's your integration type, and it comes in your daughter, so she's good for you, but there's also like, you're her disintegration type. There's always interesting the way people interact in those situations.
4 goes to 1 and 1 goes to 4.
And 1 goes to 7.
4 always goes to 1. And then 1 always goes to 7. So.
But 1 goes to 4 when they disintegrate.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I meant, like, if you're going forward, then that's the direction. If you're going backwards, then. So, 1s manipulate others by correcting them, by insisting that others share their standards. I've always thought my sister was a 1 because she was constantly finding what was wrong with me and telling me, what to change about myself.
But she wasn't.
It turned out that she was a 9 with a 1 wing, I think. But when she gets around me, her 1 comes out.
Sounds like sisters.
Yeah, that's like, that's kind of how relationships work, right? Like around one person, you've got more of this kind of thing going on, and with somebody else, you act a little bit different. The leaden rule. Okay, so this is a really cool thing in this book. The golden rule. This is the opposite of that. This is their concept for what would happen if everything you did to yourself is what you do to other people, because that's true, right? So the let-in rule for each type is how they do that. Like a 1 fearing that they may be evil, corrupt, or defective in some way, point out the evil, corruption, and defectiveness in others. It's pretty self-explanatory, the let-in rule. And the red flag fears. I like this because I've seen people around me of these different types have these red flag fears, and that's usually when I start going into alert, like, uh-oh, this is not good. You can kind of feel it if you're really sensitive to whether the person's healthy or not, you know? The red flag fear for the 1 is that their ideals, so this is like their fears, that their ideals are actually wrong and counterproductive. And then that means their whole life has been wasted, kind of, because their whole life is about their morals and their ideals and trying to live up to those. So if they've been wrong, then it's like they're all over left field, and then they get worried and angry about that. The direction of disintegration for 1 is a methodical 1, slowly becomes moody and irrational at 4. It's hard to see some of this stuff until you actually see it in person. When you first hear it, it's like, okay, I don't know. You can't imagine a 1 being moody and irrational until you're around a 1 who's disintegrating that way, and then it's like, oh, this is real stuff. The direction of integration for a 1 is angry, critical 1s become more spontaneous and joyful, like healthy 7s. Obviously, they have so many principles and so many morals and different things they're trying to do, and there's so much trying to be correct, that if they just go towards joy, 7s are all about joy and enjoying oneself. When they kind of go that direction, that's like getting out of some of that limiting, the limiting beliefs and everything. Okay, so the 1 is also called the teacher, the activist, the crusader, the moralist, the perfectionist, and the organizer. I have another 2 friend who also has a very strong 1 wing when she's around me. For some reason, I bring out the 1 people. So I always think of her, I always see the 1 stuff in her, you know, but around other people, she's got the 2 going on all the time. So it's just good to know that just because they act like something with you doesn't mean that they always act that way. Their basic fear is of being bad, defective, evil, or corrupt. So quite often you can see how if there's a 1 parent or something like that, or the parent, just normal parenting, there's like that, like, you're good or you're bad, kid, you know, kind of thing. And if the parent is saying, no, bad, you did the wrong thing, then that's like where the 1 gets attached to. Like, I can't get to that place. That's the bad place for me. Their basic desire is to be good, virtuous, in balance, and to have integrity. And that's where the 1 and the 8 differ, because 8s will be a lot about principles, too, but they won't necessarily be about balance. That's not necessarily an 8 characteristic.
Did you say balance?
Balance. 1s will be, you know, everything's got a place, you gotta put it all in its place. 8s will be like the principle of it, let's fight the good fight, but, you know, balance goes out the window if it's a really good cause, you know. Superego message for 1 is you're good or okay if you do what is right. This is a pretty easy one for me to understand. Does everybody have a pretty basic... I think it's pretty easy to understand because it's kind of one of our ideals in society, you know, especially when we're kids. It's that whole, like, you gotta be good, don't be bad. It's pretty simple. Jerry Brown, Hillary Clinton, Celine Dion, Emma Thompson, Jane Fonda, Joan Baez, Vanessa Redgrave, Ralph Nader, and John Paul II. Do we want to talk about wing types with
I don't
1?
think we have time.
Probably not.
What time is it?
It is 8:15. So, let's talk about 2 so that we know whether or not you're a 2, right? Okay. All right, 2s.
Or if you
Twos
wanted-
are,
Or if you wanted to shorten it so everybody.
well, we've already
if
done all
you
the
could
triads.
If you could just compare the 2 and the 9.
Yeah, you know what? I want to do 2 for you.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have any 3s in here.
Okay.
We've done all the triads. We don't
Okay.
have to go over them anymore.
Okay.
We've done integration, disintegration
Okay.
types.
So you're good.
There's a lot of stuff that's actually already done.
Okay.
So we're gonna do 2, 4, maybe 6,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
and maybe 9. Okay.
The 6.
Okay, so I'm gonna go fast. Okay. 2, the helper, the caring interpersonal type. 2s are empathic or empathetic, sincere, warm-hearted, friendly, generous, self-sacrificing, sentimental, flattering, people-pleasing. Close to others, they do things for others in order to be needed. They need to be needed usually. They typically have problems taking care of themselves and acknowledging their own needs. At their best, healthy 2s are unselfish, altruistic, have unconditional love for themselves and others. They are the CX on our test. Their deadly sin is pride, which is interesting. You wouldn't always think that. Pride.
I would think that would be a 3 thing.
I know. I was like, pride too, huh? Pride refers to an inability or unwillingness to acknowledge one's own suffering. 2s deny many of their own needs while attempting to help others. This passion can also be described as vainglory, pride in one's own virtue. So even though they're being really receptive, they're helping others, there's kind of like and I'm so great because of this, you know? It's kind of a 1 thing. There's like a 1 and a 3 thing there too. Okay. And their unconscious childhood message is it's not okay to make mistakes. Oh no, sorry, that's 1. It's not okay to have your own needs. That sounds like 2, right? Not okay to have your own needs. Their fear is of being unworthy or being their fears of being unworthy of being loved or not being loved. Pretty basic. This is one we've all got, right? Their desire is to be loved, which deteriorates into the need to be needed. Their lost childhood message is you are wanted. They were not told they were wanted enough. Their spiritual jumpstart behavior. So when they see this behavior, they need to transcend it, giving your value away to others. They identify with feelings for and about others, feelings about others' responses to them. They resist recognizing their own feelings about self and needs. Their self-image is loving, caring, selfless, thoughtful, warm-hearted, concerned, kind, compassionate. One of the questions on the test about the 2 is if you saw a dog in the street, would you be able to leave it and not bring it home? If you're a 2, you gotta bring it home. I think you might be a 9 then. The invitation to others is to nurture yourself and others. Remember that it is your true nature to be good to yourself and to have goodwill and compassion for others. I had a 2 friend who taught me, who was the instigator for me learning that, and that was a huge deal. Of course, that is my integration type. Okay, they are part of the feeling triad. 1s go, their energy is directed inward against their internal impulses. 2's energy is directed outward, presented to others, making a presentation. They're the feeling center, we said that. They are the positive outlook group. They emphasize, I am a caring, loving person. They focus on their good intentions. They avoid seeing their own neediness, disappointment, and anger. They overemphasize the needs of others and neglect their own needs. And they say, you have a problem. I am here to help you. And their wake-up call is believing that they must go out to help others to win them over. And they, by finding out others' needs and desires, they manipulate others, thus creating dependencies. That is actually what terrifies me about 2s. Even though they're my integration type, I love them. They can be really scary because they're actually really manipulative if they really are in their unhealthy and needing to be needed thing.
It's like giving to get, sort of.
Yeah, it's like giving for, for
It's your
something
identity.
to come back. Yeah. And the let-in rule is fearing that they're unwanted and unloved, choose make others feel unworthy of their love, generosity, or attention. Red flag fear is that they are driving friends and loved ones away. That would be a problem, right? Because then they wouldn't have anybody to help anymore. Disintegration is they become aggressive and dominating at 8. That's when there's nobody to manipulate. Right, I'm being a little bit, but
That's what.
well, when they don't have people doing around to take care of, they become aggressive and dominating, and so that they can, because they've lost their thing that's making them themselves, which are other people. And then the direction of integration is prideful, self-deceptive. Twos become self-nurturing, so self-nurturing, not other nurturing, and emotionally aware at healthy 4. Okay.
I have a 2 friend who cleans my house once a month, and I have to be on my toes all the time with her.
Yeah.
Because she'll do things like, I loaned her something which was no sweat off my butt, right? But it was important to her because she had whiplash, something that she could use. But I didn't need it at the time. So she's telling me that she's going to clean my house. She has no money. She just had this horrible accident.
Uh-huh.
She's going to come and clean my house, and she's not going to ask me to pay her because I loaned her this thing. And I'm like, no. I mean, I have to talk to her like, no, don't come and clean my house
Yeah.
if you're going to do that. I'm paying you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change my mind. I have to be one step ahead of her all
Right.
the time because she's always conceiving of new things
Right.
like that.
Yeah. No, I had experience with a friend like that too. She's my roommate, and she's wonderfully nurturing for me. But also, I had to kind of like conceive the boundaries before
Right.
I went there.
Yeah, she is very nurturing too, which I love because I don't have that many friends who
Want
I
to?
like that.
Yeah.
Just say, what do you need, Kate? It's so rare.
Yeah.
So I love that, but with everybody,
Yeah.
there's always bones.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Every ego's got issues.
Okay, like give and at a certain point, it's like they're mad at you because
Right. That's
because
right.
something because
Well,
they give so much.
they'll stop taking care of themselves.
Yeah, and then
And
they
then
get
it's
mad.
your fault.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's your
Yeah.
fault that
So they're the altruist, the lover, the caretaker, the pleaser, the enabler, and the special friend. Okay.
Huh.
It would be awesome, by the way, if we could do every type just so you would know. So the types that we didn't do today, maybe go home and get the book and get, because it definitely
Or
get,
can you do more if
We can do
anybody's
more,
interested?
yeah.
Can we do another class?
if people are into it, I mean, Susan's idea was to have a group to kind of like talk about and actually work on our own issues of our own personalities, which would be awesome to me because I always love that deeper kind of work. So we'll put it out there, okay? I'll put out something on Meetup and we'll see who's interested. If we want to do it like once a month or whatever,
That's what I was.
Is that the kind of
yeah,
regular?
something like that, yeah.
Okay, so back to 4 now. The 4 is the individualist, the romantic, the introspective type. I always want to get dramatic when I start reading that word because they are dramatic. And I've had a lot of 4s in my life. 4s are self-aware, sensitive, reserved, and quiet. They are self-revealing, emotionally honest, and personal, but they can also be moody and self-conscious. They feel vulnerable and defective, so they can also get disdainful and exempt from ordinary ways of living. Like, you commoners, I'm gonna do my own thing. They typically have problems with self-indulgence and self-pity. At best, 4s are inspired, highly creative, able to renew themselves and transform their experiences. So, they are quite often artists. They aren't always. I usually like them because I'm also an artist. I like being around people that are really like all about that, They do have a good ability to see themselves. Like, to actually be self-aware about what's not so great, you know. The problem is they have this perceived vulnerability or weakness or defectiveness that actually is not always true. Like they're quite competent a lot of the time, and they don't, you know, need to hold themselves apart from people in that way. Sometime I'll tell you about one of my ex-boyfriends. He's so stuck in his 4 thing that he thinks that he should not be in a relationship ever. That he just broke up with his other girlfriend, just like he did with me, because he needs to focus on himself, is what he said. Now, disintegration type for 4 is 2. And if he disintegrates, he starts being all about the other person. So then he goes back to being all about himself. The unfortunate thing is there's this feeling of kind of being disassociated and depressed that he identifies as himself. So a lot of times 4s will like actually be identifying themselves as a feeling. Quite often in relation to society, you know, a separate feeling. That's me. And it's very separate, individual, you know. The funny thing about 4s is they won't always be in charge of things, but they don't want to be a follower either. They're quite often on their own, doing their own art project. I loved being around 4s as an 8 because they are very emotionally, like, they will talk about their feelings. They are right out there with emotions. As an 8, it was like, oh, no vulnerability, we're not going to do that. But I was a very emotional person, so it kind of gave me an excuse, you know, permission to talk about feelings. The problem is that they will dwell in one of their feelings and wrap around it and kind of be like, this is me, this feeling is me. And then, like, even do things to promote that feeling more. Kind of. Like, they'll, like, watch movies that make them feel that way or whatever, you know. The 4 is intuitive, aesthetic, and self-absorbed. Their main deadly sin is envy. Envy is based on the feeling that something fundamental is missing. Envy leads 4s to feel that others possess qualities that they lack. 4s long for what is absent, but often fail to notice the many blessings in their lives. It's kind of like the norm for the 4 to identify themselves as being unhappy in some way. I mean, not always, but that's kind of the...
Tragic.
It's a tragic victim, yeah. It's not okay to be too functional or too happy is the unconscious childhood message. My God, some parent gave a kid a message that's not okay to be too happy. It's like, 4s fear being without identity or personal significance. They want to have an image, they want to know who they are, and then that means that they're important. I relate to that, you know. But it's interesting the way that they go about doing it is definitely not the way that I would have ever.
What would be the difference? What would be the difference?
Well, my experience is that it's all very more thought out and conceptualized.
By the 4?
The 4, yeah, they're like, what is my self-image? Let's go about constructing one. You know, it's like this very
dramatic.
Yeah, like
Acting.
secretive kind of thing, and then it goes, and then it's presented to the world, you know, and it's like, wow, I never had that much, what do you call it, scheme in me, you know, like, I'm just like, here, this is me, you know.
But you were concerned about whether you were important enough to...
There's definitely that feeling, I mean, I've had that feeling before, oh, am I important enough? Do I have individual significance at all? What I realized is that's actually about my disintegration type, my 5. That's when I was a kid, I was more of a 5. And that there is a kind of invisibility that 5s feel. So there's some, you know, there's things that all are common that cross over between types, you know. But it's just the way that the person deals with it that's so interestingly their type, usually. 4s have a desire to be themselves, which deteriorates into self-indulgence sometimes. They will quite often hole up, too. Like, my ex-boyfriend will, like, hide himself away. I also have a best friend 4 who lives out of a, we call it an RV right now, which sucks, right? But it's like, there's a little bit of like, well, I don't have to be like, you know, what do we say, the disdain for the rest of everybody else. I don't have to be normal.
I wouldn't want to work a 9-to-5 job. No way, that would be hell.
Yeah.
That would be like that.
Yeah.
Work a 9-to-5.
And I always identify with that for the 4 too. Yeah. The 4 lost childhood message is you are seen for who you are. I think there's a little flavor of 5 there too, actually. You're seen who you are. If you show this behavior, making negative comparisons, so that wouldn't be something I would ever know or do. And it's only when I read this in the book I thought, oh, okay, making negative comparisons, that's something that some of my 4 friends have done before. It's a red flag behavior. 4s identify with a feeling of otherness, of being flawed, and with emotional reactions. They resist recognizing authentic positive qualities in their self and being like others. To sustain their self-image, this is their self-image: sensitive, different, unique, self-aware, gentle, intuitive, quiet, deep, honest with themselves. The body triad is going to be a lot more like out there, this is how I am. Like a 9 actually is even pretty like, this is how I am, A 4 is going to be much more quiet and keeps themselves kind of. An invitation for everybody else is to let go of the past and be renewed by your experiences. 4s have a great ability to kind of go through a transformation because they're willing to see their problems. And it deceives me sometimes. Sometimes I think they're higher consciousness than they are, 4s, because they have an ability to go through renewal. But then they go back to their old 4 behaviors. Sometimes I'm like, oh. Remember that it is your true nature to be forgiving and to use everything in life for your growth and renewal. They are part of the feeling triad. They are concerned, they present their self-image to themselves inwardly, actually. They go inward. And they are not positive outlook group. They are definitely not. They are the reactive group. They react more by trying to create an image, trying to create a certain reaction. There's a lot of like the performer or the artist there that you can see trying to create an effect.
Aren't they ones, isn't that the one type that lends itself more to depression
Yes.
than any of the other types?
Yes, definitely. That's kind of like their norm sometimes. It's like, this is what I think is me. It's depression. They seek a rescuer. This is always a sign of a 4. If you know anybody who does this, they're a 4. They seek.
Run in, run fast.
They're waiting for someone to rescue them and take them into. This is how you know you're not a 4 if you don't do this, because they want to be seen and they want to be supported. Some supporter or rescuer person is going to do that.
And it's usually pretty out there, pretty obvious.
Well, 4s aren't obvious all the time, but when you get to know them, you see the rescuer deal. Even, I have a friend who's very not obviously a 4, but when I go back and I look at this, it's like, yeah, no, she does that, She's just a little more in her integration type. She's a little bit, she can look like a 1 sometimes. They fear abandonment, that no one will care for them, they will not have enough support, and they will become, they won't be able to find and become themselves because they won't have the support to do it. So it's not exactly the same abandonment as 6's fear or as 8's fear. There's a lot of abandonment fears if we want to go to everybody, right? 4s say, I feel really hurt and I need to express myself. And that's where the art comes in usually. That's why a lot of them are artists. They embrace the right brain more than most of the other types do, which is a good thing. Their wake-up call is holding on to and intensifying feelings through the imagination. They manipulate others by being temperamental and making others walk on eggshells. Yeah, that actually happens. And it's not always what you would expect because it seems a little irritated, sometimes instead of just depressed and sad. Fearing that they do not have an identity or any personal significance of their own, 4s will treat people disdainfully as if others were nobodies and had no value or significance. That's the let-in rule. Their red flag fear is that they're ruining their lives and wasting their opportunities. I've seen this in one of my best friends, even though we didn't know she was a 4 forever. She had so many 1 characteristics, but she has that thing she goes through every 6 months. I've ruined my whole life. I've wasted my whole time, and I didn't get out of life what I was supposed to get. So disintegration is aloof 4s become over-involved and clinging at 2. And integration is envious, emotionally turbulent 4s become more objective and principled like healthy ones. Okay. 6.
You 6?
We're not sure. We think
Yeah,
so.
I'm the 4 sounds more like it. I don't know whether I'm just changing.
Well,
I've thought I was a 6 now for 10 years without.
oh, interesting.
People always say to me, a few people always say to me, oh, I think you're a 9, I think you're a 9. And then I go back and I look and look and look, and it's like, I'll go back to them and say, no, I'm not.
You don't feel like a 9 to me, but that's only from a couple of classes that I've seen you.
I'm almost sure I'm not a 9.
Yeah, I'm
Now
pretty
my
sure you're
doubt
not
is
a 9.
about the 4.
I could see you being more as both a 4
today.
and a 6, actually. But we'll talk about the 6
Can
and
you
see.
be both?
You gotta be one. And for that, you just gotta go really deeply into reading about it and really feel into all of the, like, little things that you do. Do I do that when I'm, if you, I would look at, like, the weird behaviors that people do when they're being
Under
tested or under stress. That's how you know what you really are.
And if you can, maybe if you can sense if it's shame or fear, like underneath.
Yeah.
Can you sense that? Like,
Yeah.
can you sense that for her?
Well, if I was doing intuitive right now, I think I might go with fear. I might go with the 6, actually. But I could have seen the 4. I definitely did not feel the 9. Let's talk about 6 and see what you think. Okay, the loyalist, the committed, security-oriented type. 6s are reliable, hardworking, responsible. Defensive, evasive, highly anxious. Reactive, defiant, and rebellious.
Yes, 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 and yes.
Problems with self-doubt and suspicion. Okay, so my boyfriend's a 6, so well, I know this one pretty good
I
now.
think my husband's a 6 too.
They're the traditionalist, also they're called, because a lot of times they'll look traditional on the outside, or they'll look like a rebel. They'll look like an 8 sometimes maybe, but they're not when you get closer. At their best, healthy 6s are internally stable, self-confident, and self-reliant, and courageously supporting the weak and powerless. I thought that was a good paragraph because I hadn't read that one before. A 6 would be the CY, engaging, responsible, and defensive. Fear would be their deadly sin. This passion might be more accurately described as anxiety because anxiety leads us to be afraid of things that are not actually happening in the now. 6s walk around in a constant state of apprehension and worry about possible future events.
Are they in the head triad?
They are in mental, very definitely mental, and they are in the reactive triad. It's interesting though because they have they play both sides of the field. They go back and forth. I want to be by myself. I want to be supported. I don't want people to get too close, but I want to make sure there are people supporting me. So, I didn't get 6s for a long time until I was in a relationship with them because I didn't know. But then I realized that my mom is either a 6 with a 7 wing or a 7 with a 6 wing. It's not okay to trust yourself is the unconscious childhood message of a 6. The basic fear is the fear of being without support or guidance. So that's what I would look at, Kate, is what's your basic fear? Is it of being without identity or personal significance, or is it of being without support or guidance? I mean, when you get deeper, the deepest one. The 6's desire is to be secure, which deteriorates into an attachment to beliefs. They find whatever it is they believe in, and they attach themselves to it. And it could be a leader, or a teacher, or a
Parishioner.
philosophy, or some kind of area of study. They attach themselves to it, and then that's the most important thing, that's the highest thing, that's the thing that's the truth, everything else is not. Okay? But they could decide then later that something else is higher truth and then go to that thing. They do that sometimes. They go from thing to thing.
That sounds one-ish, but not really. They go
There's
back and forth.
kind of it's not for the purpose of having morals and being a right person though. It's for the purpose of knowing what the truth is so that they know that they're secure.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's to not feel afraid.
Oh.
But there's a similarity because they can also, both 6s and 1s can kind of look down on people if they get in that, you know, for moral reasons or for my truth is the highest truth. This person is the best leader. This is the best guru, teacher, whatever, you know. 6's lost childhood message is you are safe. That does kind of sound like what we were talking about last class with the birth.
You wouldn't believe what this shit that I went through when I was a little girl. I
Yeah.
would wait up for everybody to go to sleep so I could get up and make sure the doors were locked. Or everything was pulled away from the radiators, because if I did that so that everybody would see me, they would make fun of me. But I had to compulsively do that.
That sounds like a 6 to me.
So I
Anxiety,
would wait
yeah.
till they went to bed, and then I would get up.
So that's a first chakra need is safety. And if you don't get it, like if you feel unsafe right away from birth, like that, then it's going to be...
Well, I was born with birth defects, and they turned me over and took me to the ICU.
Yeah, you
So,
told me some
that
of that
alone
story
would
last
be
time.
enough, right? To kind of
Yeah, that's what I was
Yes,
thinking, is that was like a, to me, it was like a red flag, you know.
Mm.
And another 6 I know was originally from the Ukraine and had a very kind of unsafe first couple of years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that it's always like that. My boyfriend is a 6. It's just his mom was a 6, and there was just that kind of way of dealing with things, you know. Behavior for a 6 is becoming dependent on something outside of yourself for support. So that's the red flag behavior, like if you're doing that to try to see where it is, where's the attachment, letting go. They need to respond and react to inner anxiety about perceived lack of support. They resist recognizing support and their own inner guidance. This is something I say to my boyfriend all the time is, what's your inner guidance telling you right now? Because there's always this like referring to something outside of himself as the truth.
Mm.
And it's interesting because I wouldn't say that to anybody else probably. You know, like it wouldn't become like such an issue for me, like you are ignoring your guides. They're trying to talk to you and you're ignoring them, you know? They see themselves as that's the 5, sorry. They see themselves as reliable, dependable, trustworthy, likable, regular, careful, having foresight and questioning. That's where the traditional kind of thing comes in. Like they try to meet expectations for security. The 6, I've seen 6s and 8s look like each other before too. 8s have more of there's an anger underneath and like a I was hurt so I'm gonna make my own thing, you know. And a 6 is more like I'm not safe, so I gotta figure out what security I can cling on to. To have faith in yourself and to trust in the goodness of life is their invitation. Remember that it is your true nature to be courageous and capable of dealing with life under all conditions.
Yeah, I don't really believe that I can.
Yeah, I don't think any 6 really deeply believes that they can.
And I get really angry when I get scared. Like, I don't immediately feel fear. The first thing that I feel if there's something really threatening is I just go, "Argh."
I've
Yeah,
seen
that's
that in other
just-
6s. That's interesting because I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I've seen that with other 6s. Now that you
Not
say it.
always, but a lot.
It's probably to avoid, right? Because we always have one emotion that's underneath our other emotion often, and we're trying to avoid the one that's underneath.
Yeah, well, I don't want to feel the fear, so the anger is easier for me to feel.
Yeah,
If I have to
you'll
feel
see
the
that with
fear,
guys
I'd
a
be
lot.
Terrified.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be terrified.
Yeah, I mean, especially as a male 6, you would see that a ton because they really don't want to feel, you know, vulnerable and afraid, probably. The 6 is interesting because they will flee inward to avoid external threats and then flee outward to avoid internal fears. So that's what I mean about playing both sides of the field. And they are part of the mind center. They will go up into their head to get safe. They're part of the reactive group. So they seek independence and support. They want someone to rely on, but they also need to be the strong one. They fear being abandoned and without support, but also becoming too dependent on others. And they deal with others by being committed and reliable while trying to maintain their independence. They're engaging, but also defensive. They look quite often like they could look like a one that's doing a good job, too, because there's like that kind of I'm gonna meet society's expectations thing. But they will get defensive if you if you say anything that questions their security, their loyalty, security. A one would probably get defensive too, but their thing is more like they're angry at themselves. It's not quite as outer directing. A 6 says, I feel really pressured and I've got to let off some steam. And a 6 wing, if they have a 7 wing, they are the buddy. If they have a 5 wing, they are the defender. And if they have a wake-up call, it is withdrawing from reality. No, sorry, that's number 5. Becoming dependent on something outside of their self for guidance. We already kind of said that. They manipulate others by complaining and by testing others' commitment to them. I think that's just funny because my boyfriend finds everyone else complaining. He notices everybody else complaining, like, Fearing that they're without support or guidance, 6s undermine the support systems of others, trying to isolate them in some fashion. That's when they're really threatened, and that's the let-in rule for them.
They isolate other people.
So that's when they become scary for me, is when they fear that they don't have the support, so then they start undermining the support systems of others and try to show that others don't have support either. Red flag fear is that their own actions have harmed their security. Direction of disintegration is they become competitive and arrogant at 3. And, not that all 3s are competitive and arrogant, though, that's just the unhealthy qualities of them. They become fearful, pessimistic. 6s become relaxed and optimistic at 9. So when they start acting like 9s, so actually for you to hang out with a 9 would be really useful. Because if you act like a 9, there's that kind of like relaxing and opening up and letting go of some of the fear and everything. Okay, 9. 9 is the peacemaker, the easygoing, self-effacing type. 9s are accepting, trusting, and stable. They are good-natured, kind-hearted, easygoing, and supportive, but can also be too willing to go along with others to keep the pace. They want everything to be without conflict. That's the main thing right there. Yeah. They don't want to do conflict. They can tend to be complacent and minimize upsetting. Complacent is a good word for them, too. They typically have problems with passivity and stubbornness. At their best, healthy 9s are indomitable and all-embracing. They're able to bring people together and heal conflicts. And they can be the life of the party sometimes, actually, 9s, because they will have a lot of different friends. They can kind of keep the relationships going forever. And if they have a party, everybody's going to come because they feel it. The friends feel how they're ideal in the 9's world, It's like, oh, I love that 9 friend because they smooth everything over. For an 8, they lessen all the conflict, make everything peaceful, and then there's like that wonderful idealizing, like.
That sounds like you.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Like I can see all sides of the situation, and then I don't
Right.
take any stand, and I won't
Yeah.
say what I really feel because it might cause a conflict.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is the 9. Yay. That's good when we know. It's the BX, the peacemaker, receptive, reassuring, complacent. The main thing for the 9, we'll just go in here. Sloth. Sloth does not simply mean laziness, since 9s can be quite active and accomplished. Rather, it refers to a desire to be unaffected by life. To not have to feel or be vulnerable. There is that same, just like the 8 of not wanting to be vulnerable, actually. It is an unwillingness to arise with the fullness of one's vitality to fully engage with life. So there's kind of like, oh, I'll just kind of
Distracted.
relax at home. You know, I'll just kind of
Watch TV.
do the same thing I do all the time, maybe with the same people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the 9's unconscious childhood message is it's not okay to assert yourself. Which is like sad because they would be really great leaders actually if they did assert themselves. The basic fear is fear of loss of connection, of fragmentation. This is an interesting one because it took me a while to understand that. Their basic desire is a desire to be at peace. It deteriorates into stubborn neglectfulness. 8s and 9s are the most stubborn, usually. 1s can be stubborn too. Definitely that whole instinctive triad will be stubborn. 8s and 9s can be really super stubborn together with their friends. Nope, this is what we're going to do. That's it, you know. 9's lost childhood message is your presence matters. And their spiritual jumpstart, so their behavior that's a red flag behavior, is resisting being affected by your experiences. So it's like, okay, this is happening, that's happening, whatever, I can kind of shrug it all off, you know. It doesn't really affect me, I don't really feel it, you know. So great avoidance of feeling there too, actually. Sense of inner stability coming from disengagement with intense impulses and feelings. There's anger underneath everything with a 9. They resist recognizing their own strength and capacity because they want everyone to be okay. They want everybody else to be okay. That's kind of like a 2. That's why you were confused between the two types. A 2 will actively go out and try to help. Then I'm a person, you know. A 9 just wants to just make everything okay though.
Yeah.
Not like I don't have to
do anything.
Yeah. I don't have to make the world a better place necessarily. I just have to keep things from disintegrating. So I would keep things okay and peaceful and harmonious and able to, you know, palatable for myself, you know. And their self-image is peaceful, relaxed, steady, stable, gentle, natural, easygoing, and friendly. And they are some of the most easy people we get along with usually. They're very friendly. Everybody loves them. They're the party in some ways. To bring peace and healing into your world is your invitation to the world. Remember that is your true nature to be an inexhaustible font of serenity, acceptance, and kindness in the world. They are part of the instinctive triad, the physical. They go both inward and outward. They direct their energy inward or outward depending on where the thread is. They're going to go the opposite way of where the thread is. Kind of like a 6 actually in that way.
That's like my 2-4. Hermit.
Hermit opportunist. Yeah, hermit social networker.
Extroverted introvert.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like how they all go together like
I like
that.
it when they fit, yeah.
Well, they do. I mean, it's so interesting. So I do personality evaluations with all 3 systems for people. Human design, Enneagram, and Vedic astrology. And it's like you see the same themes. And sometimes one thing has more of something, you know, but it's like wow, if you look at that, you really understand the person then. So they're part of the instinctive center, and they are part of the positive outlook group. We gotta keep stuff positive, man. They idealize their world and the positive qualities of others and their environment. They avoid seeing problems with their loved ones or their environment as well as their own lack of development, and they feel overwhelmed by their own needs and the needs of others. They do not want to deal with either. They say, what problem? I don't think there is a problem.
Love it.
Just, yeah. And that's why sometimes I have a lot of 9 friends. I've gotten frustrated with them because they don't actually want to evolve all the time. That's not you, I can tell, but sometimes it's like, wow, you guys, they're all really kind of naturally spiritual people, but yet they don't really want to like go forward for themselves. They want to stay in the same place, you know, because it's comfortable.
Slow.
Yeah. Their wake-up call is that they're being outwardly accommodating to themselves and others.
But what do you?
That if they're outwardly accommodating themselves and others,
I mean,
themselves to others. Sorry. That's a hard one to understand, actually.
I mean that the wake up call means like, oh,
When you're doing that, it's like, oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I've been watching that.
They manipulate others by checking out, and by passively aggressively resisting others. The checkout is a big one because I have a lot of 9 friends that just be like, "What happened? Like we were really, we were hanging out all the time, and they just checked out because they just if they get to an overwhelmed place, they're just gonna go up into their happy place." And fearing that they will suffer loss of connection with others, 9s make others feel that they have lost connection with the 9 by tuning out people in various ways. So they feel tuned out, so then they'll tune out people. That's the Latin rule.
Yeah.
They will be forced by reality to deal with their problems is their red flag fear. Okay, so there's a certain not completely dealing with the problem, and their fear is that they're going to be forced to deal with it.
And then it does happen. Life makes you deal with it.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's it. Especially those of us that are on a fast track, right? Complacent 9 suddenly become anxious and worried at 6. 6 is the disintegration.
So this is interesting because my husband's a 6,
uh-huh.
and so
It's good for him to hang out with you.
It's good for him to hang with me, but
You have to be sure not to be like him is all. You have to.
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. You have to offer the other alternative.
Yeah.
To try to just be yourself
Yeah.
and not be him.
Yeah. Not merge too much.
It's hard as a woman too, because a woman kind of wraps around a man and kind of absorbs him, and, But
But you know what I think? But 3's good for a 9, right? Going toward 3.
yes, being like a performer.
And I think I grew up in a 3 household because we got the straight A's, we did the sports, we did the music, we did all that stuff, and I guess that was
Achievement.
really good. And then I noticed there were times when that sort of fell apart, and then I fell apart. When I didn't have that structure to
so
keep
that
me-
structure was really good for
Yeah, I
you.
think it was-
Yeah.
So now I'm looking at the 3 that just to try to be more 3 will help.
Yeah.
Pull it together.
Yeah. Kind of focus on efficiency,
Yeah.
performance,
And do it,
achievement.
yeah. Do the thing.
I had
Do
a
the
really
right
good
thing,
9
yeah.
friend that.
Do the
That's a good
Yeah.
do the 3 thing.
Yeah.
Do the 3
do the
thing.
3 thing.
Just gonna do the 3
Yeah.
thing.
And I think so much better when I'm doing the 3 thing.
Yeah.
I can-
Okay, so next month if we do meet, you'll have to tell us how the 3 thing's coming.
Yeah, right. Just get it together and do the thing.
I had a really close 9 friend who she's really on when she's in school or she's working for somebody where she has to give presentations. It's
Yeah.
like, wow, she's so good at that.
Yeah.
It's because there's a certain amount of relaxation there, that can come forward and perform, and then it's there. It's
Yeah.
present in life instead of being like,
Yeah.
She's really fun though to watch movies with.
Yeah.
I love 9s because you can really relax with them.
Well, the other thing is you could lean towards, if you're a 9, right?
Yeah.
You could lean towards your 1 wing as a wing, which is more the organization and
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm
one's
definitely
in my
more
mind.
1. I don't think I'm an 8 at all. Like that
Let's look at the wing tips real fast for 9. It's like, and if anybody wants to know their health chart after class, you can totally stay. I will stay as long as you want.
What do you mean, health care?
There's a health chart.
So how far do
The-
you run?
It's like the
I haven't agreed yet.
9 levels
Oh,
of
yeah,
unhealthy
yeah,
and
yeah.
unhealthy. Some of
I should
that's
have that book.
useful. When you look at it, you're like, oh, well. Don't worry, because every time somebody looks at something like that, they're like, oh no, I do that sometimes. It's like, it's not quite as dramatic as it sounds. If you're a 9 with an 8 wing, you're the referee. That's like what one of my best friends was, of course, because I'm an 8, so it's like we have that in common. You're probably not. You're probably a 9 with a 1 wing, the dreamer.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
The
she
dreamer?
seems more like the dreamer. Yeah, that's what
1
it
wing? I don't think so.
says. Well,
1s aren't dreamers.
No, but
well,
the 9 with
it's
the
not
1
that. It's the combination of the two. For some
Oh,
reason,
okay.
they call it the dreamer. I know it doesn't make sense to me all the time why they name these things that way, but it's like those combinations somehow create this healthy people of the subtype are imaginative, creative, able to synthesize different schools of thought or points of view. So interesting. So we would have thought you were a 4 or one of those creative types if we hadn't, gone into it deeply. But They have a vision of an ideal world. They're particularly good at nonverbal forms of communication, art, instrumental music, dance, sports, or work with animals and nature. And can thrive in large institutions. They are typically friendly and reassuring and have a distinct sense of purpose, especially about their ideals. They often make good therapists, counselors, or ministers, balancing non-judgmental listening with a desire to be of help to others. So they're less healthy. When they're less healthy, they want external order as a way of giving order to their internal world. People of this subtype tend to get caught up in non-essential activities and busyness.
Yeah.
They can be energetic. That's the one coming in, I think, some of the busy, like we do this, then we do this.
Yeah.
They can be energetic but detached in an uninvolved way that interferes with their ability to stay with long-range goals or to enlist others in joining them. They're less adventurous and more reserved people of the other subtype.
So that's a 9 coming in to the 1.
9-1.
The wing.
That's the
wing.
one wing, yeah.
For the 9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you want to hear your wing types?
I know, I'm pretty much on.
You know.
Which one are you? 5?
I think earlier in my life I was more of a 7 wing. And I still am. I'm very social. I can be very social if I'm not having my health issues, take over my life.
Yeah.
I relate to the buddy,
The body,
I
yeah.
tend to, just feel like I want to befriend everybody, but of course you don't have the time to do that. And I can see who people are. I just can. I can just kind of see
Project
through.
The sevens have that ability to kind of like, yeah.
7 or 9? Wait, what
Well,
is she?
She's saying that she's a 6 with a 7 wing,
Okay.
and that might be my mom's actually, and she's also a projector, interestingly.
Yeah.
And that there is this kind of insight with that. I think maybe it's the 7 influence, that there's like a kind of a experiencing the world and kind of understanding the different things out there in the world, the different archetypes and people.
You sound very 7-ish to me too.
I have a 7 wing also.
I feel like lately, more as I get older, I'm more of the 5 too, but I've always been interested in systems and
Yeah.
arcane things and just
Well-
books. I've always been taking all this information.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, they do say that you can change your wing type. That it makes more sense than actually changing your whole type your whole life. It makes more sense. Like I seem to test as a 9 wing type when I was younger, and now I test as a 7 wing type. So
Well, I see both in me now.
yeah.
Now.
Oh,
I'm
that's
seeing
true. You
5 and
can't
7.
have both, right?
I-
You have a predominant.
say you can have
I
both.
think one of the instructors had said you can have both. But
I
it
think
gets so confusing.
that's a
how
little
many-
less
yeah.
common though, because when you
Yeah.
really get into somebody's, really deeply into them, you can kind of. I
You
usually
figure
can,
out their
we can
ways.
usually,
Or sometimes the wings can be so strong you mistype them because they're in their wing type.
That's true, especially if they're always in that wing type with you.
Yeah.
That's why I mistyped my sister. I thought she was a 1 because she's always in her 1 type with me. But that was, not the way her rest of her life was.
I'm sorry, but I have to get my trash out before
Go,
the bear
go.
comes.
No,
I got
no.
a bear now.
You got bears?
I got a bear. I couldn't believe it.
Oh
Where
my
do you
gosh,
live?
you're in Auburn
Yeah,
too.
and all these like shh, shh, shh on the trash can.
In Auburn?
And so when it gets
In
dark,
Auburn.
yeah, I live right off Sherland Track.
That's what.
Auburn Folsom, and there's a bear down there, and we don't even have that many
Thank
trees.
you for being with us.